Born into royalty, she was destined to become an empress. Instead, she was cast aside, overshadowed by her own sister. Helene of Bavaria lost her crown, her future, and the man she was meant to marry. She endured a humiliating rejection and watched as tragedy tore through her family again and again. Helene Therese was born on April 4, 1834, in Munich, Bavaria. She was the eldest daughter and second surviving child of Maximilian Joseph, Duke in Bavaria, and his wife, Princess Ludovica of Bavaria. Within her family, Helene was affectionately known as Nene. Unlike her younger sister Elisabeth, Helene did not enjoy a carefree or adventurous childhood. She was more serious and reserved, preferring quiet, structured pursuits over the outdoor activities her sister cherished, such as riding and exploring nature. As she grew older, these differences became even more pronounced. Helene developed into a composed and dutiful young woman, seemingly perfect for the role of a future empress, the very opposite of her spirited and famously unconventional sister, Elisabeth. Meanwhile, in Austria, Archduchess Sophie, Ludovica's sister, was searching for a suitable wife for her son, Emperor Franz Joseph I. She preferred a niece as her daughter-in-law rather than another royal outsider. With this in mind, she invited Ludovica and Helene to Austria so that Helene could meet the emperor. Notably, Helene's father was not included in the invitation, as tensions between him and Sophie were well known. At the same time, Sophie gave little thought to Helene's younger sister Elisabeth, not out of dislike, but because she considered her, then only 15, too young and inexperienced to be a suitable bride for an emperor, especially when Helene was already nearing 20. Helene's father had already given his approval for the match, and since both Ludovica and Sophie were eager for the marriage to proceed, it seemed that Helene and Franz Joseph were as good as engaged. Yet Ludovica made a quiet, fateful decision. She chose to bring Elisabeth along. The young princess had recently suffered heartbreak after falling in love with a count who had since died, leaving her deeply distressed. Hoping to lift her spirits, Ludovica believed the journey might offer some comfort. Thus, the three women set out for Bad Ischl dressed entirely in black as they mourned the loss of a relative. Their luggage, containing more suitable attire, had been sent ahead but arrived late. As a result, they were forced to meet the emperor and his formidable mother dressed in mourning. The contrast between the sisters was striking. Elisabeth appeared radiant, her beauty heightened by the stark elegance of black. Helene, however, seemed less at ease, her features better suited to softer, more flattering colours. In a cruel twist of fate, Emperor Franz Joseph did not fall for Helene, but for her younger sister, Elisabeth. The outcome left both sisters deeply unhappy. Elisabeth, not yet 16, felt unprepared and reluctant to bear the immense burden of becoming empress. Helene, meanwhile, was left to endure the quiet humiliation of rejection. Elisabeth went on to marry Franz Joseph and live an unhappy life at the Austrian court. To add insult to injury, Helene was required to curtsy to her younger sister at the wedding. Already prone to depression, Helene became increasingly withdrawn. She began attending church daily, and Ludovica feared she might choose to enter a convent. Instead, Helene devoted herself to charity work and was warmly received wherever she went. Still, her mother remained determined to find her a suitable match before she was considered too old. In time, Ludovica's attention turned to Maximilian Anton Lamoral, hereditary prince of Thurn and Taxis. He had likely crossed paths with the family during a hunt hosted by Helene's father. Sensing an opportunity, Ludovica arranged a dinner and ensured Helene was present. This time, fate was kinder. Helene and Maximilian quickly formed a genuine connection. Although Maximilian was of lower rank than Helene, his family had grown immensely wealthy following the Napoleonic Wars. Even so, it was not easy to secure the approval of Helene's cousin, King Maximilian II of Bavaria. He eventually consented, and Helene married Maximilian on August 24th, 1858. Elisabeth was unable to attend the wedding, having given birth to her first son just days earlier. Nevertheless, the ceremony at Possenhofen was a grand and joyous occasion. Many members of the imperial family were present, including Ludovica's half-sister, Caroline Augusta, Dowager Empress of Austria. Though heavy rain fell throughout the day, it did little to dampen the celebratory spirit. Their honeymoon was spent at Biederstein, after which the newlyweds travelled to Bad Ischl to visit the imperial family. There, Helene's husband quickly formed a warm rapport with Emperor Franz Joseph. The two shared a passion for hunting, which helped ease Helene's place within the imperial circle. Now, Helene found herself at the heart of one of the wealthiest and most influential courts in Europe. At last, her life had taken a gentler turn. Unlike the troubled marriages of her sister, Empress Elisabeth of Austria, or even her mother, Helene's union was a happy one. Before long, she gave birth to her first daughter, Louise, followed by another daughter, Elisabeth. Then, an unexpected letter arrived from the emperor. He requested that Helene accompany her sister to Corfu, where the empress hoped to recover from illness, possibly for several months. Though hesitant, Helene knew such a request could hardly be refused. Reluctantly, she agreed to go. Her husband accompanied her for part of the journey, but on August 18, 1861, Helene boarded a train bound for Trieste, where they said their farewells. Upon arriving in Corfu, Elisabeth was overjoyed to have her sister by her side. Yet as the days passed, Helene came to understand more deeply the unhappiness that plagued Elisabeth's life at the Austrian court. Far from being comforted, she found herself quietly counting the days until she could return home to Regensburg. Sooner than expected, she took her leave and returned. On June 24, 1862, Helene gave birth to a long-awaited son and heir, Maximilian Maria. Not long afterward, her husband relocated their official residence into the city, naming it the Erbprinzen Palais, where the family settled in 1863. In 1865, when her brother Karl Theodor was set to marry Princess Sophie of Saxony, daughter of King John of Saxony, all the siblings were invited. Helene and Elisabeth agreed to meet in Prague to spend a few days together before the wedding. But beneath the surface of Helene's seemingly contented life, shadows were gathering. Though her marriage had been happy, it soon became clear that her husband was gravely ill. As Helene entered her fourth pregnancy in 1866, his condition worsened rapidly. By the time their second son, Albert, was born on May 8, 1867, his physical decline could no longer be ignored. His doctors desperately tried to save his life with several cures he had to drink, but it was no use. He died in his beloved Erbprinzen Palais on June 26, 1867, still only 35 years old. The emperor granted the guardianship of the children to Helene, which was surprising given his conservative views. Recognizing her strength and capability, her father-in-law also began preparing her for a greater role, gradually educating her in the management of the family's vast estates and responsibilities. Yet Helene's grief remained profound. Deeply devout, she spent an hour each morning in prayer at her husband's mausoleum. When her father-in-law died in 1871, her eldest son inherited the title, becoming the 7th Prince of Thurn and Taxis at just 9 years old, with Helene guiding the family as regent. Though her lands were prosperous, her personal life grew increasingly marked by loneliness. Her second daughter, Princess Elisabeth of Thurn and Taxis, married Miguel, Duke of Braganza, and soon gave birth to their first child, Prince Miguel of Braganza, Duke of Viseu. 2 more children followed, Prince Franz Joseph of Braganza and Princess Maria Theresa of Braganza, bringing moments of joy to Helene's life. But tragedy struck once again. Weakened by the strain of bearing 3 children in quick succession, Elisabeth died on February 7, 1881, at only 20 years old. Helene had prayed fervently for her daughter's recovery, yet no prayer could alter her fate. The loss shattered her. With her sons away at school and her eldest daughter, Princess Louise of Thurn and Taxis, married in 1879 to Prince Frederick of Hohenzollern-Sigmaringen, Helene's isolation deepened further. In time, she turned her attention to securing a bride for her eldest son, but fate proved merciless once more. His health, long weakened by illness, failed him, and on June 2, 1885, he died as the bells of Regensburg tolled in mourning for their beloved prince. Once again, Helene was called to serve as regent, this time for her younger son, now the 8th Prince of Thurn and Taxis. Overcome by grief, she fell into deep depression and sought comfort in travel, visiting her sister Princess Sophie in Bavaria in Paris. Later, she invited her sister, Empress Elisabeth of Austria, to join her on a journey to England. It took 2 long years for Helene to emerge from her mourning. By then, her son Albert had grown into his role and supported her as best he could. Her regency continued until his 21st birthday in 1888, but by this time, Helene's own health had begun to fail. She was diagnosed with stomach cancer. Albert sent an urgent telegram to Vienna, and Elisabeth rushed to Regensburg. She arrived just in time to say goodbye. On May 16, 1890, Helene died at the age of 56. She was laid to rest in the family crypt in Regensburg. Today, the legacy of the House of Thurn and Taxis continues through her descendants. Her great-great-grandson remains its current head.